friends, Miss Cindy here from Mahopac Public Library again with another take and make craft for you. Masks, unfortunately, have become a part of our everyday lives, and today you're going to have the chance to make your own very special mask with some very simple sewing techniques and a really fun way of adding your own design on the front. So you can pick up these kits at the youth services desk for as long as they last, as long as supplies last. I have about 30 of these, a little more than 30. And what you will get when you come to pick up your kit is a piece of cotton fabric. This is 100% cotton fabric and it is washable. It'll be folded like this, and I'll explain in a minute what we're going to do with that and turn it into a mask. The other things in your kit will be a piece of parchment paper, and this will be used when we're going to be ironing the design onto your mask. And the sandpaper will also be used for the design, believe it or not. The couple of other things you will have are, oops, my thread just fell right out there. Some embroidery thread that you'll need to stitch your mask, and the elastic that will go over your ears and hold the mask on. A few things that you'll need to supply yourself at home include crayons and a home iron, and you will also need a needle and thread. So I'm not supplying these needles. We do have the larger plastic needles that we used for weaving, and you will need a needle like that later, and we can supply those, but those needles are not sharp enough to go through the 4 layers that you'll be stitching through to do this. So you will need to supply a needle, and you can get those at probably a job lot or at an arts and crafts store or even at the dollar store. So let's get started. So the first thing you want to do to prepare your thread is to actually separate out these strands. The embroidery thread that you get in your kit is actually 6 strands of strings, and that's really thick for doing this activity. So what I'm doing is splitting it into 2 3-strand sections. So I counted out the 3 little strings, and now I'm just going to pull those 2 sections of 3 strings, and you can see how the string is unwinding, so you want to kind of pull it out, otherwise it will get a little bit tangled. So just keep pulling all the way down and keep straightening it out, so you end up with 2 strands that each have 3 threads, and it will be much easier to work with, and it will be much easier to get through the needle. So now you have 2 strands. So the next thing you're going to want to do is thread your needle with those 3 strands, and I brought a needle already threaded. All right, so you want a knot at the end and you want your threaded needle. So for your fabric, what we want to do is work with the folded fabric the way it came out of your kit. So you're going to leave the fold close to you, and on the sides you want to fold up less than 1 inch, so somewhere between 1/2 inch and 1 inch, about 3/4 of an inch. And you could just finger press it. It does stay pretty well like that if it's finger pressed, but if you have a home iron, you will need a home iron to put the design on this. So if you have it handy, you may want to just go ahead and press those nice and flat. Now, this is something that probably parents want to do. The iron does get hot, and this is really something for adults. So you have to keep your fingers well away from the face of the iron, but go ahead and press those down just to make it a little bit easier while you're stitching. So you're going to start with what's called a running stitch, and we're going to do the running stitch right down this edge. At this edge we're going to change to something called a whip stitch. We'll go around this because this is the edge that's open, and we don't really want your mask coming apart, so we're going to stitch those 2 together. Then we're going to go back to here and we'll do a running stitch again all the way down. So I'll show you those stitches. So now that we have our edge pressed up about a little less than 1 inch, you're going to come up right here, maybe 1/4 inch from that raw edge, and then just pull the through all the way to the knot, and it'll be nice and tight. So a running stitch is basically just moving the needle in and out of the cloth. So you're going to go down, and it is 4 layers of fabric that you're stitching through, so you do have to use a little bit of push to get it through there. So you pull that stitch through, going down, come up a little ways away from that stitch, pull it all the way through, just up and down. Your stitches are going to be about 1/4 of an inch or so, and you want to keep it away from the edge. You don't want to be too close to that raw edge. So 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch away. If you start getting fancy, you might even be able to do down and up together and pull it through. So that's if you're getting fancy. So I'm going to finish up this edge, this seam, and then I'll show you the whip stitch. Okay, so we made it all the way to the end, and now I'm going to put the needle down one more time. Now we're ready to do the whip stitch. So we need this is going to be open here, and that's where it's like a little channel where we're going to put our elastic for to go around our ears. So for the whip stitch wraps around. So right now the thread is coming down at the bottom. So I'm going to bring it up and down, but it's not going to be the running stitch before. It's actually going to wrap around these raw edges. So then you're always going to be moving the needle in the same direction. In this case, going down and pulling it through. So we'll go down one more time, and notice how it has that sort of slanted appearance, which is fine. And this will also help to keep that raw edge from unraveling, because the cotton is washable, and there's no reason why you can't throw this mask in the wash. We are supposed to wash our masks almost every time we wear them. So just keep whip stitching all the way down the length of the mask, all the way along the edge like that. And if it's a little crooked, you can pull it over. Now we're back to the other edge where the other fold is, and we're ready to go back to the running stitch. So the thread is coming down from the bottom, and I'm going to put it up and over, and we're going to start that running stitch again. So pull it all the way through, and that's okay if it wraps around. It'll wrap around the edge like that. And now we're going to do that, continue this running stitch all the way to the end, and we're done with that part of the sewing. Okay, well, all the way at the end, and you've now gone all the way around, and you've almost completed your mask. So you should be really proud of yourself. This is kind of an ambitious project for anyone, especially if you've never sewn before. So right now, all you need to do is put a knot right in your thread, and you may want to do it twice. So make a loop, put the thread through, and then just pull it tight, and then you can cut that extra thread. So if you wanted a white mask, you could just leave it the way it is and be finished. But I thought it would be fun to add a little decoration on your mask. So I'm going to keep the stitch side down, and I'm going to consider that this is going to be the top. So this is the part that's going to be going over your nose. And the way we're going to do a design on this is actually with the sandpaper. And we're going to be making what's called a monoprint. So you're going to be coloring something directly on the sandpaper, and then you're going to color it with a crayon nice and heavy, and then you're going to turn it right over here and use your iron to press, and that will melt the wax from the crayon right onto your cotton fabric. So I'm going to show you the design I did for this mask, and as you can see, it was a rainbow, and I did leave the clouds white, so I didn't color anything there. I wanted it to stay white, and I kind of did just a little bit of the blue in the background to be the sky. So this is the sandpaper that I drew it on, and I colored it nice and heavy, so there's a lot of wax, and that's why the sandpaper is good to use for this, so it catches all that wax. And then I just inverted it over there and pressed it with the iron, and voila, you have your design transferred on there. One thing you will notice is that the design is reversed. So if you're going to write anything, you have to write it backwards. So you may want to stick with just drawings, any kind of a design. You could do zigzags or stripes or hearts or flowers. You could do a rainbow like I did. And I think just to illustrate this for you, I'm going to try something I've been thinking about trying, and I have not had the nerve to try. So I'm going to maybe try doing a face. Another thing you could do a big smile. I think one thing about the masks is we don't get to see each other's smiles as much. But I'm going to try and see if I can turn this into an animal face, maybe a cat or a dog or something like that. So there's going to be my nose. And I'm coloring nice and heavy. You want to make sure you get that really heavy on there. And I'm going to make sure my iron's getting hot so we can do the transfer. And let's see, I guess I'll use a black crayon, and I'm going to make a nice smile for this. Maybe it's a cat. And remember, color it nice and heavy. You want a nice heavy line. You may need to go over your design several times to make sure you have a lot of wax on there. And dogs and cats seem to have these little places where their whiskers grow. So there we go. There's your design. Make sure it's exactly the way you want. On this one, I wanted to really put a lot of color. This one, since I'm doing it quickly, I'm not adding a lot of color. But you may want to make your design nice and colorful and personalize it. So let's see if this works. I'm going to turn it upside down. I want the nose to go right at the top. So I'm going to move it all the way up to the top. And inside, as I said, you have a piece of this baking parchment. And that'll just protect your iron and make sure that it won't be touching the paper directly. So my iron's nice and hot. And you want to keep it moving. You don't want to sit too long in one spot. So go ahead and iron directly on there. Again, you probably need an adult to help you with this part of it, but keep the iron moving. Give that wax some time to melt on down into the fabric. And I'm going to go over specifically because I know where my design is and make sure those areas are really pressed on there. Okay, so let's take a look and see if it transferred. I'm going to pull up the corner and look. There you go. There's my design. I can't wait to try it on. So let's get that elastic in there, and I'll show you that next. So in your kit, you have two pieces of this elastic. And I actually have taken the time, and you can do this if you don't have one of these heavier needles. You could actually push it right through that tunnel. It is a little faster if you have one of these large plastic needles. And if you did our weaving kit from a few weeks ago, you should have one of these at home. If you didn't do the weaving kit, we can provide a plastic needle like this for you. And it's so much easier if you just thread that through, pull the needle all the way through that tunnel that you stitched. Here you go. And you want to hold on to the end of the elastic. You don't want to pull the end all the way through. So then when you get it all the way through, you take the two ends and put them together and then tie them in a knot together like this. And this way it's adjustable. If it's too loose or too tight, you can always adjust it a little bit. So there's your first elastic. And this is why I did the elastic after the decoration, because as you can see, it wrinkles the fabric a little bit. So it's easier to iron it on while it's flat before you put the elastic in. So let's do the next one. Okay, there we go. Let's pull that through and let's put that through that channel. Okay, now pull the needle off. You have your two ends. Again, put them together. Or wrap it around your finger to make a loop. Put the ends through the loop. And now you have a knot. Okay, and again, it's adjustable and washable. All right, ready to try this on? Okay, here we go. Let's try it on. What do you think? Well, I hope you had fun watching me make a mask. And now it's time for you to come to the library, pick up your kit. Again, you have just about everything you need. You do need to supply a sewing needle, an iron, and some crayons. I bet you have all those things at home. Have fun, be creative, and these also would make great gifts. So, till next time, see you soon.